Second round draft order video. As always, we're really excited to have you guys here today. The one thing that we always ask of you guys is just leave a like, subscribe, comment, and tell us what you think. We want to hear from you guys. So, of course, as always, do that. If you have any disagreements or arguments, questions or thoughts, leave them down below. We just want to hear from you. If you have any ideas for videos you want us to do in the future, also leave that down below, and we will hopefully be able to get around to doing those. Another thing is check out our website. It's finally published. We have our rankings up there. As you've said many times in the past, we update those basically almost daily. And so what you see tomorrow is not going to be the same as a week from now and a month from now. So you can continue to check that. That's one of the things that we take pride in. If you buy a fantasy magazine, it stops updating itself once they post it. And so
a lot of times the information is 2 to 3 months old.
Yeah, and so a lot of times the information is just not very good. So we're going to continue working on that and updating things to our website. You can also check us out on Patreon if you'd like to support us. And as always, we have a ton of other videos if you want to watch those. But we'll just get right in here and start talking about what exactly is this video about, because it's kind of a goofy name and there's probably not a whole lot of videos like this out there.
So the first thing we'd say is if you haven't watched our first draft video, it would be good to watch that because that kind of sets up kind of how to get to where we are today. You can see there on the site the list of who we had in our first round, and the video explains who, why, and where we took them for those various reasons. So the question is this a mock draft? Is it a list of our top overall players? And what I would basically say is kind of a little bit of both. It's kind of tricky. It's not simply our best overall rankings. Now what we're kind of doing is we're giving our best overall rankings, but we're doing it on a hypothetical draft. And as is the case in any draft, you have to have flexibility. There's going to be ebbs and flows based on how other teams draft. And of course, it's always not just about taking your next best rated player. You're going to have to look at things and say, okay, my next best player might be this guy, but I think I can get him in the second round right now. Maybe there's a run in this position. Do I react? Do I wait? And so that's kind of what we're doing with this. The point of this video is to give you some feedback, some food for thought, to help you develop draft strategies and get an idea where players are kind of going overall in the draft. Now, a few things, this is important. We talked about this in our first video, but the parameters of this, okay? So here's what the parameters we're given for this draft is. And it's so important because you have to take any information we give you, whether it's our start sit video, whether it's our waiver wire video, and you got to contextualize that into your league scoring system, league rules, roster requirements, limits, etc. So for this draft, here's what we're going based on this scenario. It's standard league scoring in a 12-team league that requires 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wideouts, a tight end, kicker, and a defense that you must start. So that's kind of where we're at with this one. So now we're in the second round, which would be the 13th overall pick. And Christian, why don't you get us started with your 13th overall pick in the second round?
All right.
13th overall pick first in the second round. So.
Yes. So my 13th pick is going to be Dalvin Cook. Now, like you said, we're going to talk a little bit about which players had been drafted before. Being that this is a snake draft, the last pick in the first round gets the first pick. So this person just drafted. In fact, they draft twice in a row. If you watch our other video, you'll know that they took Travis Kelce. Watch that video if you want to know why. I know that a tight end in the first round just seems crazy. I know that people are going to hate me for it, and maybe I'm just dumb, but watch it and you'll find out why. So then now they come and they secure running back in Dalvin Cook, and he's a guy I'm really excited about. Last year in 4 games, basically 3.5 because he was hurt on the 4th game, he had 354 yards rushing on a solid 4.8 yards per carry. 2 rushing touchdowns, 11 catches, and 90 yards. Those numbers seem pretty good. I remember he was either the 4th or the 3rd best overall running back for yards before he got hurt. But let's look at what would happen had he continued on that pace. He would have finished the season with 296 carries, over 1,400 rushing yards, and 8 touchdowns, plus 44 catches and 360 yards. Those are pretty good numbers, but they're actually better than you'd think. Now, because in the first couple of games he didn't happen to get a receiving touchdown, that pace says he wouldn't get a receiving touchdown all year. We could imagine he would get 2 or 3, which would add to that. But even with just those numbers, he would have finished as the 5th fantasy running back in standard leagues. That's really good. That's really solid. And yet he's coming down into the second round. That's even more impressive when you consider that they just released Jerick McKinnon and let him go to the 49ers. So they clearly have confidence in him, while there is Latavius Murray there. That is clearly not his job. They really like Dalvin Cook. But here's the most impressive thing. In the 4 games that he played, that offense struggled. They were going between Bradford and Keenum back and forth. Pittsburgh held him to 9 points. Detroit held him to 7, and yet he was still having such a good fantasy season. I think that's because he really is just that good of a running back. With Kirk Cousins in, he's a good quarterback, but I really like the Minnesota offense. I think they're fine checking the ball down and running it a lot. I think this is going to be a huge year for him.
Yeah, if anything, Dalvin Cook came out of college. He was had a great career there. He was rated very high. He had questions about durability issues. Of course, he goes out and gets hurt. At this point, though, they're saying that his recovery has been excellent. He's well ahead of schedule and should be ready for the beginning of this season. So
he's already running some drills and practicing right now, in fact, which is great news.
Great. So let's get to my first pick in the second round. So that'll be Team 12, who had the last pick in the first round. And on the flip, here's who they're going to take. Their first pick that they took was Melvin Gordon, running back, and they're going to come back around. And I got them taking Devonte Freeman. And so here's why I had them taking that. If you look at Devonte Freeman, he had 35 touchdowns the first 3 years. Now remember, and we say this a lot, I sound like a broken record, but in standard leagues, touchdowns are really king. So in standard leagues, that touchdowns just really have an elevated value, unlike PPR leagues where catches and other things factor in. In standard leagues, touchdowns are so valuable. Some people at this point might be thinking, what about Saquon Barkley? Well, when we look at him, we'll get to Barkley in a little bit here, but for me, Freeman's a proven commodity. And I'm really huge on Barkley. I think that guy's going to be a stud. I love everything about his game. But once again, he hasn't played one snap in the NFL, and so there's some question mark there where Freeman, he's proven himself. There's been how many other running backs that were drafted in the first round in history that were supposed to be great that were bust? Think about Trent Richardson, Lawrence Phillips, Kajana Carter, Blair Thomas, Curtis Enos, DJ Dozier, Alonzo Highsmith, Rod Dane, etc. And so when you look at Freeman or Barkley, now if it was a dynasty league, obviously Barkley hands down, but it's not. Freeman is proven, so I like this. Now some might say, well, what about drafting maybe say wide receiver Adams or Demaryius Thomas or A.J. Green, who are still out there on the board? Well, for me, the bottom line is there's still a lot of good, solid wide receivers left. And when they come back around, they can grab one of them. But as far as running backs go, who have proven to be guys that can get in the end zone, he's one of the few ones remaining, so they go with Devonte Freeman.
All right, I think that's a solid pick. Let's move on to our number 14. All right, so my number 14 pick is Melvin Gordon. And here's why. So back in 2016, he had 997 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns, plus 41 catches, 419 yards, and 2 TDs. So he had basically combined for 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's a pretty solid season. Then he comes in 2017, he gets 1,100 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, plus 53 receptions, 476 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So then that year he gets about 1,500 yards rushing and another 12 touchdowns. He's not a huge receiving running back, but I like that he stepped it up. He got an extra 12 catches last year, which for me is huge. I really like that. He's starting to get more involved in that passing game. The extra 2 receiving touchdowns is nice, keeps him on the field more. Like you said in standard leagues, touchdown, guys who gets touchdown, those are the guys who perform the best. Those are the guys who you should be going after. And he's had 12 touchdowns 2 years in a row, numbers that I really like. But here's what I like most about him. 2 things. First of all, I love that he has no competition. No one on that team is threatening to take his job. If he gets hurt and misses a week, he's going to come back and he's going to be fine. There's no one going to steal his time there. He is the man. And on top of that, I really like that their defense in San Diego's in
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
It's hard for me. I think about the San Diego Chargers, like I can't get that out of my thinking. But
we've had a whole year to get used to it, and I don't like it. Anyways, sorry. The Chargers have really stepped up their defensive game, and it's not like the days of old where they're passing the ball a ton. Phillip Rivers is going to step back and not throw the ball as much this year because that defense is going to hold teams down. I think they're going to be fine running the ball a lot with Gordon. He doesn't have a really high yards per carry. He's not fantastic. He doesn't wow me, but he definitely gets the job done. He finds the end zone.
He finds the end zone, and like we said, that's huge in standard leagues. So.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm back around to Team 11, who in the first round took Julio Jones. So what are they going to do now with this pick? Well, for me, I'd really love to see this team secure a good running back. I think running backs, and we've said this in the video before, especially if I look at a running back video, that's really where you make your money in fantasy leagues. I think a lot of others, you can have a bad draft, a wide receiver, quarterback, and make up for it. It's very hard to make up for bad production in your running backs, whether it be injuries or whatever it might be. And so I'd love to see them get a running back. Our next highest rated running back is Saquon Barkley. Now, normally, if you've ever played with me, if you know anything about me, I tend to play conservatively. I'd rather go with the proven commodity. But in this case, I love this guy. I have no issues taking a rookie at this point. I think he's going to have a huge season and a career. So they grab Saquon Barkley. They got Barkley and Julio Jones. So looks like they've got two good players there.
Yeah, I think that's a solid draft right there so far. Number 15 overall guy is Leonard Fournette. Now, in the first round, this person or whoever this team would have been had drafted Mike Evans. So they go out and they get a good, solid wide receiver. But like you just said, with Barkley and Julio Jones, you get a good wide receiver in the first round. Now it's time to come back and you need to get a running back. It's really important to get a good guy. And at this point, the best guy out there is Leonard Fournette, and here's why. First of all, I really like that he was a first-round, 4th overall pick. He's a physical, pure runner. He's a beast. Jacksonville loves him. He's their man. No one's there. There's no running back by committee. There's nothing there. He's the guy. He was on pace for 12 touchdowns last season, despite the fact that he missed 3 games. He is such a good running back. He doesn't do a whole lot in the passing game, but here's how good he is rushing. He played just 13 games, and in 7 of those 13 games, he ran for over 100 yards or received to combine for that. I believe 6 of those were just running, and then 1 he had a few receiving yards, which got him over that mark. In most leagues, you get bonuses for that. That's huge. It also shows you how productive he is. Over half of the games that he played last year, he broke 100 yards, and he was on pace for 12 touchdowns. That offense really leans on him. I think this is a great year for him, and I think that'd be a really great pick to come up and show a running back in the 2nd round. I'd be pretty happy with Fournette in round 2.
Yeah, so for me, we're at Team 10, and Team 10 in the first round took Mike Evans. Look at the similarities here. And so if you can, it's nice to lock in a running back, although I would say don't get in that pattern of thinking. You still want to evaluate certain things and take a look, and maybe lock in another great wide receiver is the answer. But in this case, I think there's still enough good running backs out there, and so they take Leonard Fournette. And so I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I think Leonard Fournette is very good. He'll excel in the goal line, and I think he's going to have many touchdowns throughout his career. He had 10 his rookie year. And he's a guy that really is no competition. The only concerns I have really is not him, but Blake Bortles. Will Blake be able to move that offense? I think at times he'll stall out, but they're going to win there in Jacksonville playing defense and running the ball. I like Leonard Fournette. He's a good quality back. I think he's going to have a decent year, especially in standard leagues. Once again, if it was a PPR league, you might want to bump him down because he's not used actively in the passing game, but this is a standard league, so he's a perfect fit at this point, so that's who they take.
That's a solid pick. I agree with you. Good time taking Fournette. All right, so the number 16 player and the team 9 is going to take Devonte Adams. In the first round, they went out and got Saquon Barkley. You get a really solid young running back. Watch the other video. I really like Barkley. In fact, I was surprised you didn't put him in the first round, although he is a rookie. But now they want to get a wide receiver, and Devonte Adams is the man. I'm so excited to see what Adams can do this year. First of all, I'm not the only one that's excited about him. The NFL's top 100 just came out and ranked their top 100 players in the NFL. Devonte Adams comes in at number 45.
That's pretty high.
It's pretty high. He's the number 7th receiver on that list.
That's huge.
They love him around the NFL. That's huge. So I'm not the only guy who's big on him. Not only that, but over the last 2 seasons, he's combined for 238 targets, 149 catches, over 1,800, almost 1,900 yards receiving, and 22 touchdowns. He's gotten an average of 11 touchdowns the last 2 seasons. Those numbers seem pretty good, but those numbers are a lot better. This is finally going to be the year for Devonte Adams to really, truly take off. In 2016, he was the number 2 wideout to Jordy Nelson, who went out and got like 14 touchdowns or something. He was kind of a ball hog. What a jerk. But and then in 2017, he's the number 1 man most of the season because of Jordy Nelson's health issues. But then Rodgers is gone, and he only plays 6 games with Aaron Rodgers. Could you imagine not having your quarterback 1 year and being the number 2 guy most of the time, and yet you're still able to almost average 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns a season? With Rodgers healthy, him healthy, and him the number 1 man, this is the year for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he went out and got 14 touchdowns.
Yeah, Jordy Nelson really shined in that role. And I think that you look at Aaron Rodgers, obviously I'm a Vikings fan, it's hard to say this, but Aaron Rodgers is probably, not including postseason, probably the best quarterback we've seen in our generation. He's got a career quarterback rating over 100. No other back in the history of the NFL has done that. So now, like you said, he becomes the #1 guy with Jordy Nelson gone, and I think he's going to excel in that role. I think he's huge. I like him. Obviously, I'm not going to take him there, or that's where he'd be at my draft, but I'm a huge fan of Devonte Adams this year. So for me, we're at team number 9, and team number 9 took Odell Beckham in the first round. So what are they going to do here? And on the coming back round, I'm going to have him taking Jordan Howard. It kind of comes down to, do you take the best player available? We took a look really at 2 guys that came down to me. It was either Howard or Dalvin Cook. They both have some question marks. For me, Dalvin Cook's question mark is his health. For me, Howard's not necessarily him, but the surrounding offense that he has. Howard loses value in PPR leagues, but in standard leagues, he ranks ahead of Cooks. This is a guy who is a stud running back. You look at the first 2 years in the NFL, he's recorded 2,435 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns in 2 seasons. That's better than Gale Sanders or Walter Payton did when they played for Chicago. That's huge company to be in. Now, I think that's what's amazing about those statistics is that he played for a really bad offense. In fact, a lot of time he faced loaded boxes. There are a lot of 8-man boxes that he faced. So it's really quite amazing that he did that. I think a new coach, as hopefully Mitch Trubisky develops into a better quarterback in the second season, I think he'll excel once again. A guy who is big, physical running back in a standard league, should be able to find the end zone. He's the pick that I take. So this team now is Odell Beckham, and they have Jordan Howard. So that's where we go.
Yeah, I think it speaks a lot for a player when your biggest concern about him isn't his health or his production or his talent, when it's just the team around him. When your biggest concern with him has nothing to do with him, it tells you how good that guy is.
Yeah.
So I'd be pretty happy with him there. But we'll move on now. So now I'll talk about our number 17 pick. So this is the 8th team, 17th pick overall, and they're going to go out and take Julio Jones. In the first round, they got Ezekiel Elliott, and so they've got their solid running back, but now they need a wide receiver, and we're going to go with a solid guy that we've seen for years, but very, very good in Julio Jones. He said 9,095 receiving yards in just 95 games. That means he almost averages 100 receiving yards a game. That's huge. Love that about him. Basically averages 95 yards a game, and averages about 1,500 receiving yards a season when he plays 16 games. When he's healthy, he averages over 1,500 yards. Big yards guy, big receptions guy. In fact, he has not had less than 1,400 yards the last 4 seasons. He's so good. He gets so many targets. He's even higher in a PPR league. The only reason that we bump him down past some other guys like Devonte Adams and a few other receivers, simply that some years he struggles to find the end zone. Only once has he reached or surpassed a 10 touchdown receiving season, and so that's my only really concern with him.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, Julio Jones is a guy that's obviously stud. He's a guy that takes a hit in standard leagues, but huge in PPR leagues, and this is a standard league, so I can see why he slipped to where he did in the draft. I'll let him go in the first round. And so for me, here we are now. We're looking at team number 8, and team number 8 in the first round took Alvin Kamara. And so what do they do? Well, there's no stud running backs left that are locked to the guys that have shown that they can find the red zone. I do like Dalvin Cook, but he has durability issues, so I'm not going to take him right now. And I got to take Michael Thomas to complement Alvin Kamara. Now that's weird because they're both playing the same team. Don't let that bother you. I know we can get hung up on that, like, oh no, what if that teams get shut down? Stats don't matter. In the end, it's all going to work itself out. So there's a lot of guys, running backs, wide receivers on the same team in the history of the NFL. They've had great years. Yes, Saints could struggle at some points in some games. Certainly that could hurt you, but in the end, it's all going to balance out. Numbers are numbers. Take the best player available. Okay, I know many years ago there was this idea, and I thought it was just a foolish way of thinking, that people would draft a quarterback and they try to draft a wide receiver on the same team because they would say, well, if they connect, that's 10 points, 4 for the passing, 6 for the receiving. That's just stupid thinking. Just pick the best guy out there, the best numbers, and it's going to wash out in the end. And so for me, it's Thomas. He's a very solid wide receiver. First 2 years, he's been excellent. Coming into a third year, he's got a great quarterback. And then I think that bodes well is they're already talking about throwing the ball more effectively. I'm sure that defense is now going to focus on trying to shut down that Saints running game that was very, very effective last year. Plus, Ingram's going to be gone for 4 games. I think you're going to see a statistical bump this year for Michael Thomas. In fact, I see him really taking that next step this year, and so that's who they lock up: Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I noticed that you go Kamara and Thomas, both Saints players. In the third round, you basically have to take Drew Brees now. So you just keep rolling with that.
Yeah.
All right, so now we'll move on to our number 18 pick. So we're excited to talk about those. My number 18 is Devonte Freeman. He's a guy you've actually already had picked, and I have him bumped a little bit lower than you just for some minor concerns, but we'll talk about why I like him. Last year was a bit of an off year, but only due to injury, and he doesn't have a huge history of injury throughout his career, so that's not really what it is. The previous 2 years, he averaged 11 touchdowns, over 1,000 rushing yards, plus 63 catches, 500 yards, and 2.5 receiving touchdowns. So basically, in 2015 and 2016, he was getting you 13.5 touchdowns and about 1,500 yards. That's unbelievable. That's really good. So why isn't he higher? Why is he lower than some of these guys? And here's why. First of all, Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman is a guy that if Devonte Freeman struggles, if Devonte Freeman gets hurt, if Devonte Freeman fumbles the ball too much, Coleman can easily come in and take away so much production. Of course, I'm always a little bit nervous coming off of an injury year from a player, but that's not really it for me. I think say that the biggest reason for me is last year he was injured and he missed a lot of games, and yet he still managed to fumble the ball 4 times. Running backs who fumble the ball that many times in a season, especially in a shortened season for them, they don't stick around the NFL too often. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be out of the NFL, but I just have some concerns, and I feel like Tevin Coleman can definitely move into that role a little bit. I think he's very talented, but I got to bump him down for just a couple of minor reasons like that.
Okay. So for me, we'll come back to team number 7. Team number 7 in the first round took Hopkins, stud wide receiver. I know you love Hopkins. So they got him on their bench. So time to get a running back, right? And so I look at the board and I think, okay, is there a running back out there that's going to be a lock to get a lot of touchdowns once again in standard scoring? And so here's my thinking on this as I look at the draft board and see what's happening out there. I think there's a lot of running backs in that next tier that we can safely assume are going to be there when it comes back around to them. Okay. And so I look at A.J. Green, who still falls into that tier 1 wide receiver ranking according to my rankings here. And I look at the running backs, the tier 2 running backs that you can get in the 3rd and the 4th round. But yet I know one of those stud receivers isn't going to be there. So I flip the script and I don't go after a running back here. Rather, we secure A.J. Green, who has in 3 seasons broken double-digit touchdown. This is a guy that's shown that he can be a really good player in standard leagues. He can get in the end zone. And so they go ahead and take A.J. Green. They got a great wide receiver there. They got A.J. Green. They got Hopkins. They're really set in that role. And so they don't have to worry so much about their 3rd wideout. They can take somebody later on and maybe even roll a dice on that. They're locked with solid wide receivers there.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to argue with the logic behind that, but man, 2 receivers in 2 rounds makes me nervous.
I typically don't go that way. I'm a huge, if you know anything about me, I'm running back early and often. But I also have to say, you know, you got to put your feelings, emotions aside, and you have to look at the numbers. And for me, it comes down to numbers and just analyzing the tiers and who's available. But yeah, typically I'm a guy that's going to get my running backs early. And this one, that would be hard for me in a draft to take 2 wide receivers, but
yeah, it would
we did
be
it
hard,
here.
but you have to do it. It's the best guy out there. All right, so now our number 19 picks. This is Team 6 in the first round. They went out and got Kareem Hunt. So now we're going to take Michael Thomas. We're going to shore up our number 1 wide receiver spot. I love Michael Thomas, 6'3", 212, big wide receiver. Drew Brees loves him. He's only 25, so he's still young. In his first 2 seasons, he played very, very well. Averaging 98 receptions on 135 targets, almost 1,200 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. Now, his first year, he came out and he had 9 receiving touchdowns, and last year that dropped to only 5. But don't be concerned. That was simply due to the Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, insane running game situation. Drew Brees dropped to only 23 passing touchdowns, the lowest he's had in a very, very long time. That's going to bounce back up quite a bit this year. Teams are going to focus more on the run. Ingram has a 4-game suspension. Brees is going to throw the ball in the end zone more, and you know who he's going to throw the ball in the end zone to? Michael Thomas. So really excited to see what he could do this year. I think he's going to have a great year. Again, don't be worried about the 5 touchdowns last year. That was simply due to kind of an obscure season for them where running for the first time in like a decade was their main thing that they did.
Yeah, most of the stats that he had was actually in the second half of the season. He started out very slow. All 5 of his touchdowns were in the second half. A lot of his catches, his yards. So if you take the second half of the season, you project that out, he actually did really well. I think he's going to be just fine.
The final thing that I really like about him is he comes in his first year and he plays so well that the Saints are fine with letting Cook walk. They're like, well, you go somewhere else, we don't care. We've got our man. And I think that says a lot about him.
Yeah, let Brandon Cooks go. That was huge. So for me, that comes down to team number 6. They landed the best wide receiver, Antonio Brown. And so once again, that idea that if they could secure running back, it would be good, but we don't want to push ourselves down that. So is there a stud running back left out there? Well, in a lot of ways, there actually is a stud running back who's got a very high ceiling, but he has question marks. And that guy's Dalvin Cook. This is a guy that if everything went well and he stays healthy, he could be a phenomenal top 10 running back, maybe even top 5 or 6, although he has question marks. So the question is, how far do you let that guy like that slip? And I don't think you can let him slip any further. I think you got to grab him right now. So they do. They take Dalvin Cook, and hopefully they cross their fingers he stays healthy. What I would suggest to team number 6 here, though, in the draft is that it's important for them to get a third good running back on their bench just in case, or either handcuff Cook with Latavius Murray. But that's who they take at this point. They're going to have Antonio Brown, and they're going to have Dalvin Cook are the 2 guys they're going with.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty solid first 2 rounds. I'd like to have that, hopefully. But we'll move. All right, so my number 20 pick is Jordan Howard. So the team with the 5th pick in the first round, they went out and got DeAndre Hopkins, who in my mind is going to be the #1 fantasy receiver this season, even ahead of Brown. But watch the first video if you want to find out why. I know that seems absurd to some people, but so they get a wide receiver in the first round. In the second round, you come out and you get a running back in Jordan Howard. Now, because of the way things worked out earlier with some players I had picked a bit earlier than you, Jordan Howard actually falls in this draft, which I guess lucky for them. But he's in his 3rd year in the NFL, and he's only 23 years old, which is awesome. He's a great runner. Last year, he had 5 100-yard rushing games. He played so well. My only concerns with him, and the reason that he drops this far, is he struggles a little bit in the passing game, although he did a little better last year than the year before. And his yards per carry dropped from 5.1 to 4.1. Now, his yards per carry is not a concern for me. They had Mitchell Trubisky as their quarterback last year, and it was simply due to bad quarterback play. If you were playing the Chicago Bears, who was the only talented player on that offense you were going to focus on? It was Jordan Howard. So, of course, his yards per carry dropped, and actually, considering that 4.1 isn't all that terrible, I imagine that's going to bump back up a bit. And considering he started to work in the passing game a little bit better last year, hopefully this year Mitchell Trubisky can get that passing game going a little bit more, and he can get more involved in the passing game. Should really open up the running game for him. So that's why he goes here. Those couple concerns makes me drop him down further than you, but I still think he's going to have a good year.
Okay. So for me, it comes down to team number 5, and they drafted Kareem Hunt in the first round. And so what are they going to do at this point? Well, they grabbed the last tier 1. If you look at our wide receiver rankings, I feel bad. I'm not going to regurgitate a lot of the information and stats that we've given to you that we've talked about in many previous videos. And so if you want to know more details on why we like this guy, go ahead and watch wide receiver videos. But so they take Kareem Hunt in the first round, and they grab the last tier 1 wide receiver, which is Devonte Adams. So Adams, it falls in that category. He's a tier 1 guy. I'm huge on him. So that's where he's at. Last 2 years, like you said, he's at double-digit touchdowns. And then we've stated many, many times in standard leagues, it's all about the touchdowns. It carries a lot of weight, and so that's what they've got. Kareem Hunt, and now they got Devonte Adams. Looks like they've got pretty 2 good guys right there. So that's who they go. If you want, again, more information on why we like him, you can watch some of our other videos.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so my 21st pick, Team 4 goes out in the first round, and they take Alvin Kamara, and they get a really solid running back. I'm very excited about him this year. We come into the second round, and to be honest, there aren't a lot of running backs at this point that I'm very excited about or that I would have much desire to have on my team, so we're going to go out and get Keenan Allen. Of course, we all know the injury concerns with Keenan Allen, but last year he was so dominant. He was the 3rd best fantasy scoring receiver in standard leagues with 102 catches on 159 targets, almost 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's the #1 guy there for the Chargers, so that's really good. No one else there going to get most of the targets. So why is he only the 7th receiver off the board? Because a guy who was just the 3rd best receiver and nothing really changes, why do I bump him down to 7? Well, I have a few concerns. Of course, injury is always a concern. He's had poor health throughout his career. I also don't like that there's no one to loosen the pressure off of him. Gates is gone. Henry's gone. We haven't really seen any receiver there step up. The running game is, as we talked about with Melvin Gordon, good but not great. Gordon doesn't receive out of the backfield very well. So the question is, what's going to stop teams from putting a #1 corner on him and double teaming him, double coverage, putting a safety over top, things like that to limit him? Honestly, I don't know if there is anything, and so that's a big concern for me. And then finally, unlike in years past, the Chargers have a good defense, and I think that that's going to hurt him a little bit because he's not going to get a lot of 4th quarter receiving yards out of desperation drives and things like that as he used to in the past. So that's why I bump him down to number 7, but he's a very talented wide receiver.
Okay, so it's funny we're on the same guy right now, actually. So team number 4 in the first round took David Johnson. So they could use a wide receiver or maybe another stud back. But ultimately we go with Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen actually has tier 1 type talent. The one concern is history of injuries that have kind of really kept him out of that tier 1 element. Another thing that hurts him a little bit, he's better in PPR leagues. This is not a PPR standard. Yet with that said, all things considered, he's really too good not to grab at this point. And so they grab it. They got David Johnson. They got Keenan Allen. So
Yeah, solid pick. Any guy who gets 102 catches is pretty solid choice late in the second round. All right, so now my number 22 pick. So team 3 in the first round, they go out and they get David Johnson, third overall. And now with the third to last pick in the second round, they're going to get their first wideout in A.J. Green. A.J. Green is the model of safety and consistency at wide receiver, right up there, just about as consistent as Antonio Brown. Since 2011, he's been so good. 6 of the last 7 years, he's had 1,000 yards, and the only year he hasn't was in 2016, where he had 964 yards in just 10 games. So this guy, when he plays, he's going to break 1,000 yards for you easily. He's the #1 wide receiver there. Really like him for those reasons. With 57 touchdowns in his first 102 games of his career, he gets about 9 touchdowns in 16 games. That's good, not great, but he's consistent. 9, he's not getting any less than that. His only concern is that at 29, he isn't young, and his quarterback situation isn't great. But he's been able to play with that same quarterback situation for about 7 years now, so clearly that's not too much of a problem for him.
yeah. That new offensive coordinator may have helped him there. So for me, team number 3, they drafted Ezekiel Elliott in the first round. They could use a wide receiver right. When I take a look at who's left wide receiver wise, there's a lot of them are kind of that same talent level. And so they can come back around in the next round and grab that wide receiver that they need on the flip. And so I have him grabbing WR-AJ. Now, once he got traded to Philadelphia, he really thrived. First of all, it's important to remember, he's only 24 years old, still young. After his trades, yards per carry jumped from 3.4 to 5.8. First 4 weeks in Philadelphia, he didn't get a lot of carries. He's still trying to learn the offense, the book like that. So he only got single digits. But the next 5 weeks, he had double-digit carries. It's so important to remember, this is a guy that back in 2016 exploded for 3 200-yard games. That's amazing. In fact, only 4 other guys have done that. 3 other guys. He's the 4th. Tiki Barber, Ocam, and O.J. Simpson. He's got solid heads on the back, but not great, but solid. I think it's going to help, too, having Carson Wentz back. That's kind of deep. Says when you game plan for Philadelphia, you're going to game plan for Carson Wentz, not to shut down WR-AJ. So I think that bodes well for him. I like him here. For me, it's not hard to imagine him going out and having 1,600 combined rushing and receiving yards, and even getting 8 to 12 TDs because he's big and physical enough that he'll get long goal line carries. So now they've got Ezekiel Elliott and they got WR-AJ. They're set right there. And on the flip, coming around, they'll probably grab their wide receiver.
Yeah. My number 23 pick, so this team 2 gets the second pick. They go out and get Le'Veon Bell. And like you just said, now are we looking at wide receiver? Well, the way things are looking, I'm thinking that all of the wide receivers that you'd really like are off the board. So for me, I'm going to go out and get Christian McCaffrey if I'm them in this situation. He's a first round, eighth overall pick last year, which I really like. Jonathan Stewart is finally gone, so that's good. He is the man there. Not great that they signed C.J. Anderson, but I don't think that they didn't throw a lot of money C.J. Anderson's way, so they're not clearly expecting him to come and be the #1 guy. However, he'll definitely take away some carries. Last year, he disappointed some people. In fact, he disappointed me, but don't let that concern you with last year he had 117 attempts, 435 rushing yards on a weak 3.7 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns. He did manage to get 80 receptions, 651 yards, and 5 TDs. But those numbers were really weak at first, but then the last 8 games he really took off with 68 carries, 388 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns running, and 3 receiving. So if you average that last 8-game stretch out for a full season, he would have had 776 yards rushing, 4.6 yards per carry, and combined 14 touchdowns rushing and receiving. So he would have had a far better season there. That's why I really like McCaffrey. He finds the end zone both ways.
Okay. I like him more in PPR leagues. I think in a PPR leagues, he could easily be top 10. I dump him down in standard leagues, but I hear what you're saying. So for me, team number 2, they took Le'Veon Bell in the first round. It'd be nice to find a wide receiver. No, a lot of people, I know you're going to be hating on this. You think it's way too early to take Josh Gordon, but I'm going to take Josh Gordon. Now, I'll tell you what, he's got by far the highest ceiling of any wide receiver. I don't just mean left. I'm talking about any wide receiver out there. He's got the highest ceiling. Now, granted, he's got a lower floor because of a lot of question marks with his behavior. But let's say you don't take him. Let's say you want to lock in a wide receiver to complement Le'Veon Bell. You could grab an Adam Thielen. You could grab a Cooper, for example. But none of those guys have the ability or the ceiling to end up top 3 to 5 in scoring. He does. he does have that ability if everything falls into place. He's got a new quarterback. Looks like he's got his head on straight. Last year he showed he still has that talent. He's only 27 years old. And then mark my words, when August rolls around, okay, in a lot of drafts, many owners are willing to take the chance on this guy. In fact, we're even seeing right now in a lot of mock drafts, he's going a lot earlier than he is actually ranked. And so when I look at it, okay, I grab another wide receiver that's going to be good. I could grab this guy that could potentially be great. I'm going to take that chance on this guy. And if I want to secure another wide receiver that I'm more comfortable with, I can grab him on the next round. So that's who I take.
Yeah, solid pick there. I like that. A bit early for me, but with such a high ceiling, it's hard to pass him up.
Yeah, we can get to once again. I don't want to get a lot of stats and numbers, but if you want to watch our wide receiver video, we'll break down a little bit more stats and why we like him and how we feel so confident that he's going to have a good year this year. But I'm not going to get into that right now.
All right, so my last pick in the second round, this team goes out in the first round with the first pick. They get Todd Gurley, and you don't have to pick for quite a while. So many talented running backs and so many talented receivers are off the board. Now who do you take? And for me, you go out and you take Rob Gronkowski. And I know that a lot of people don't like taking a tight end this early. I already took Travis Kelce, and people are probably wondering why. Well, as I said in our last video, last year Gronk scored 139 fantasy points. He was the #1 fantasy receiver. He dominated. For me, it's about drop-off. At this point, you can get a lot of okay receivers and okay running backs, and if you wait, you'll be fine. But at tight end, if you wait any longer, you're not going to get another good tight end like him. The fourth running back scored just 64% of what he scored. So if you want to wait even just 3 tight ends later, you're getting like half the talent. You're not getting nearly as much. Since 2014, when he is healthy, Rob Gronkowski is the New England Patriots touchdowns and yards leader every season. He is hands down the guy. With Tom Brady and Belichick, they're going to get him the ball. I really like that offense for him. Like you mentioned in our tight end video, which you should go watch if you want more in-depth discussion about him, his 16-game stat projection has him getting 74 catches, 1,100 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Hands down better than any other tight end in the league ever, not just playing right now.
Yeah, in the history of the NFL.
History of the NFL.
Yeah, Tony Gonzalez, doesn't matter, Kellen Winslow, you name it, he is the best. But go ahead.
So he's not just better, but he's not just better than most tight ends, and he's not just hands down better than most tight ends. In fact, he's better than most wide receivers. In 2011, he was the #2 scoring among wide receivers and tight ends. In 2014, he was 5th. In 2015, he was 5th. In 2017, he was 3rd. So at this point, he's outscoring receivers who are already taken off the board. Go out and get this guy now while you still can. Absolutely worth. Great pick.
Okay. So for me, team number 1, 24th pick. In the final pick in the second round, they took Todd Gurley in the first round, so they're set there at running back. And on the back round, they're going to take Amari Cooper. He's the next best rated wide receiver out there. He's very talented. He had some issues last year with injuries to David Carr, but he's healthy. Carr's healthy. You get John Gruden there. I think he's going to be fine. And when they come back around, they can grab their wide receiver. If they want another running back, you name it. But right now, they take Amari Cooper with that pick. Now, I'll say this. We'll talk about doing these mock drafts, the top 24, top 12, whatever, and we kind of work this out. You know, for me, it's a lot easier doing it when you're playing. I'd rather play in a league with a lot of veterans. To me, the hardest part is when you play with unpredictable people that don't know what they're doing. I remember I play with veterans that are very competitive. They've done it for years. I love it. I kind of get an idea how they're going to draft. But I remember one time being in a fantasy football league with 16 teams. It was a church league, so we had mixed people where we had some that knew a lot about football, others that know nothing about football. And my strategy has always been, I'm going to wait to take my quarterback. So first 10 quarterbacks go off pretty early. There's still 2, 3, 4 very good ones out there, and only a couple more teams need them, so I'm going to wait, right? And then all of a sudden, like in the second or third round, these rookies at fantasy start taking their backup quarterbacks. So when it comes down to predictability, I think a lot of it, you have to know your league. You got to know who you're drafting with. Are these people that have done it historically or traditionally? Are they veterans or are they new? These are all things we factor in. This is based on the idea that you're playing with people that know what they're doing and they're going to stick basically to the numbers.
Well, that was the funny thing about that season. I think by the end of it, because people were taking, like, somebody had 3 quarterbacks in a league where you only have like 12 spots. It was just weird. I had like the 20th quarterback, the 20th ranked quarterback, and yeah, I still managed to finish with like the 2nd or 3rd best record. It just tells you, like, again, really know the league that you're drafting in. Get ready for it. You know, this is our draft order, but this is not going to be the draft order for your league. So you have to be ready for anything that can happen in the ways that people are going to draft. And hopefully you can use that to your advantage to understand where guys might go if you can wait or not.
Perfect. So keep an eye open there. We've got a couple more videos. We're going to do part 3 to this coming up soon. This weekend, we're going to release our kicker, our defense, another video where we talk about guys who were injured last year and what you guys can expect from him. And during those videos, we're actually going to do the hat name draw for that hat. We've talked about it, but we are going to do it. We're waiting for Ryan to join us again so we can get that done. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Also, by the way, the website is actually officially out there. Go to check it out. We're going to be adding a few things to the website too. God bless and take care.